Brisoce is the exchange student that you have like a 3-week affair with.
Hey, we can see that you don't have pants on.
Somebody hit somebody with a pie. Do something.
Giovanni yelling we're out of time as we go off the air.
Giovanni yelling a lot of things tonight.
And welcome to the Mark It Down podcast.
Hola y bienvenidos a otra edición del podcast Mark It Down. Soy Nick Cummings y estoy de vuelta para reseñar AEW. Esta noche fue Grand Slam México, and I'm going to give up on the Spanish before a bunch of people get confused. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Mark It Down podcast. My name is Nick Cummings, back here once again to review another episode of AEW, technically Dynamite. This was actually Grand Slam. I hope all that went through. I honestly don't know. It feels like, it looks like my mic is screwing up a bit. Tell me if you guys heard me speaking Spanish as we say hello to Fernando, who's here first. What's going on, dude? Appreciate you kicking with me here this evening. So as I was saying, it was Grand Slam Mexico down in Arena Mexico with CMLL as AEW's partners here tonight as a part of a pretty big lineup this week of AEW, CMLL, Ring of Honor, and I even think a little bit of New Japan sprinkled in there. Big lineup of shows for those companies. So it's been pretty good so far. So let's dive right into tonight's episode. As is tradition the last few weeks, we're on late because the shows have run long. But we start with our first segment, which was actually the only promo segment of the entire show, which was Hangman Adam Page coming out and giving a promo in the ring en Espanol. With some translations from Excalibur, which was helpful because while I speak some Spanish, I don't speak enough. So anyway, Hangman told a story about some workers, Mexico, who had come up to his family's farm when he was younger, and he said that they worked very hard for their families, and it showed him that it was better to work together than to fight each other because it all works out then better for everybody. Wow, I almost destroyed my battery. That's why we almost didn't go live. Sorry. Anyway, he then says that CML and AEW together, it leads to the best wrestling in the world, and he thanks the people for allowing them into their home. He then briefly turns his attention to Jon Moxley, saying that he is not allowed to be in the arena for the main event tonight. But they didn't say about Hangman returning after the main event. And then he curses at Mox in Spanish before leaving. This is really cool. Shout out to Hangman having some pretty damn good Spanish, I gotta say. And as Fernando even getting in on the Espanol there, buenas noches to you as well. But no, it was really cool that Hangman was able to come out there and do this in Spanish. And it set up what I thought was a pretty cool night. Starting off the wrestling portion of the show, we had a 14-man tag team match. A lot of the matches, I don't want to say a lot of them, but the two big tag team matches tonight had a little bit of rewriting in terms of who was going to be in them because of they were calling them travel issues. I don't know if it was just they wanted to get certain people on the card or what, but it ended up being Bandido, Templario, Atlantis Jr., Adam Cole, Brody King, and Daniel Garcia facing off against Hechicero, Dax Hardwood, Konosuke Takeshita, Kyle Fletcher, Josh Alexander, Lance Archer, and Volador Jr. And I believe that I want to say Templario and Volador Jr. were the late additions to this, especially at least Volador Jr. was. Cash wasn't able to make it. Again, they said reasons beyond his control. I don't know if that has something to do with his his gun charge or something. But this all came about last week at Summer Blockbuster when Atlantis and Atlantis Jr. had that promo segment in the ring, and then it just became an absolute free-for-all of heels and faces after FTR had insulted them, and it led to this. I will say this to start off about the Mexican crowd. They were pretty good about acknowledging the AEW kayfabe. They mostly cheered the faces, booed the heels. There were occasions where there would be CMLL guys facing up against AEW guys, and they would cheer the CMLL guy almost no matter what. But in this match, it was very weird because they do not like Atlantis, and they especially do not like Atlantis Jr. They were cheering the hell out of everybody who was beating them up. They were booing the hell out of them whenever Atlantis or Atlantis Jr. were getting some offense in against whomever it was. So I don't know the full details of what's going on down there with the two of them. Maybe, it might just be a Roman Reigns situation where they're being shoved down their faces as faces and everyone wants them to be heels. But either way, it was a very interesting dynamic. Towards the end of this match, we had Cole and Garcia fight Fletcher and Alexander to the back. So that took them out of the match. And then we had Brody take out Takeshita and Hechicero on the outside with a massive tope suicida. And that left Dax one-on-one in the ring with Atlantis. With Dax being heavily cheered for beating Atlantis down, he went to pick up for a brainbuster, but Atlantis countered that into a small package and was able to keep Dax down for the win to a chorus of boos. After the match, Dax started beating Atlantis down again to a bunch of cheers until Brody, Atlantis Jr., Templario, and Bandido came up and they made the save, and Dax had to retreat into the crowd. This match was fun. It was too many people. It was, I guess, it was 14 guys. It was 7-on-7. There were so many people they couldn't even all stand on the ring, so they just basically stood on the floor until one of them was getting ready to tag in or do something in the match. It was a little difficult to keep track of. They did not give a fuck about who was legal. There were no tags at all. Like, when Atlantis and Dax came in, neither of them were technically legal. So, it's, I think, kind of a Lucha Libre rule, so I'm going to let it slide. But all the moves were cool, and all the action was cool, and it was really fun seeing a lot of these guys mix it up. But it was too many people in this match, and I think it ended up taking away from it just a little bit. We say hello in the comments to him saying one thing that stands out to him from tonight, which is the influence of Lucha on American wrestling. And you can really see it. And I don't think you just see it, obviously, in the other luchadors, but you see it in just so many, American wrestlers. You even see it in a lot of Japanese wrestlers because of their excursions down to places like CMLL or other companies. But yeah, stuff like arm drags are a staple of Lucha Libre are becoming so, not like commonplace. That's what I'm looking for in American wrestling. The Destroyer, which we saw quite a few of tonight. I know it is a Canadian Destroyer, but the Lucha Libre, they love it down there, and you use it all the time. Tope suicidas, tope con heroes, so much has now become, standard offense for American wrestlers. It is really cool. We also say hi to Maria, saying that Hangman spoke some pretty good Spanish. His Spanish was very, very good. He sounded gringo, but it was still very good. She also says she was confused by who was the face and heel in this match because there was way too many people. And yeah, it was a little confusing. Part of that was because there were too many people, and part of that was just because of the way the Mexican crowd was cheering. Again, they were cheering a lot of their own guys against the AEW guys, no matter if they were face or heel. And then they were booing the hell out of Atlantis and Atlantis Jr. no matter what, even though they are faces. So that's just the way it was doing. Like, there was a spot where somebody was fighting Fletcher. It might have been like Templario or Bandido or somebody. And they came out, and Atlantis Jr. came in, and then he immediately stopped booing Fletcher and started cheering him because he was beating up Atlantis Jr. So that made it a little confusing if you didn't really know the dynamics of which luchadors from CMLL were heels and which were faces. But for the most part, it was, if you were on the side of the Don Callis family, you were a heel. And if you were on the side of Adam Cole Bebe and Daniel Garcia and Brody King, then you were a face. Brody, a bit of a face with that shirt tonight as well. Although I'm not getting into that. All right. But yeah, as I said, good match, good action. Just, it was too busy, in my opinion. After this, we had a quick recap about Kazuchika Okada attacking Kenny Omega last week and all that to do with that. And that led into, after commercial, our next match of the evening, which saw Okada face off against Mark Briscoe. This came about just because Briscoe was upset about what Okada had done to Kenny, and he called him out in a video, and they showed part of it before the match, but it was put out online. I think it was over the weekend, actually. So that led to this match. You had this back-corny piece of shit, Don Callis, come out with Okada, although he notably did not come out with the family in the match before, and Don was, of course, on commentary. We'll get towards the end here, which started with Briscoe doing a great spot as Okada hit the pose and flipped him off. Mark got up, grabbed his finger, and tried to bite it, but Mark has no front teeth, so Mark had to take Okada's middle finger and use his molars to bite Okada's finger, which was great. That led to Mark hitting an exploder suplex and then a froggy bow, but Okada kicked out. After a bit of back and forth, we then had a great sequence of counters where Mark would counter the Rainmaker and attempt to hit the Dre Driller, and then Okada would counter that. And they went back and forth on those counters until Okada was finally able to counter into a Tombstone Piledriver before he got Briscoe back up and hit the Rainmaker for the win. After the match, Don jumped into the ring and gouged Mark's eyes, and then held him up for Okada to hit Briscoe with the title belt before both men stomped him out a bit and then headed to the back. This match was okay. It was incredibly plotting. I don't really think, outside of Okada rolling out of the ring at the very start of the match, I don't think it really left the ring either, which was very interesting. But it was a very slow, methodical match. And I don't want to say no, Okada can do better, because it wasn't bad per se. It just wasn't necessarily for me. I like the faster pace matches, especially when I know Okada, who will build slowly to an ending. This just didn't feel like it crescendoed the same way most Okada matches usually do, at least for me. So while I love Mark and I love Okada, and I don't think they put on a bad match, I think it wasn't the worst match of the night, but it wasn't near the top of the matches for me, especially for something I was really looking forward to. Maria called it fun, and yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say that if you had fun watching this, you're wrong. You know, like the wrestling you like. It just wasn't my favorite on this card. After this, we followed up with MJF versus Místico. This was a whole lot of fun. So you had MJF bringing back the American hero gimmick. Plus, he had a combination of like the red, white, and blue while still kind of repping MVP-inspired gear, which was really nice. Obviously, he was accompanied by the Hurt Syndicate, but the big entrance here was for Místico, because the whole crowd sang his song. Apparently, it's called Ameno by it's E-R-E. Geez, my Spanish is so rusty. It's ERA in English. But apparently, everyone knew what it was. Everyone loved it. And it was such an epic entrance. Great for Místico. It made him look awesome. I will jump ahead here, because at one point, MJF decided to leave the ring, and he headed up the ramp. So Místico followed him up there and tried to hit a Tierras, but MJF was able to counter that, and he hit a leaping Tombstone Piledriver. MJF then grabbed referee Bryce Remsburg and dragged him back to the ring to start the 10 count, but Místico did an awesome sit-up that got the crowd super hyped, and he was able to stagger back into the ring to beat the count. Shortly after that, MJF went up top. He called for a 450 almost, I think. I'm not sure he can hit that. But Místico met him up there after a series of kicks. I hit a Spanish fly, and he followed that with the Tierras into La Mística, which is his Fujiwara armbar. But as MJF was tapping, MVP had gotten up on the apron on the opposite side of the ring and distracted Remsburg, and he never saw the tap. MJF was then able to hit a low blow and went for a roll-up, but Místico kicked out. And MJF, being very annoyed by this, decided he was fed up and just hit another low blow in Místico to Místico right in front of Remsburg, and that caused the DQ. MJF then took out Remsburg and went back to beating up Místico, and he was then joined by the Hurt Syndicate, who got in on the beatdown before MJF finally took off Místico's mask and ended up climbing to the top rope and putting it on. That led to, I believe it was Bandido, Templario, and Titan coming down to face off with the Hurt Syndicate. And that distraction, as they kind of had a bit of a standoff at the bottom of the ramp, allowed for Speedball, Mike Bailey, and Kevin Knight to sneak in on the other side of the ring, climb to the top ropes, and eventually hit Bobby Lashley and my man Shelton Benjamin with stereo drop kicks to knock them out of the ring. Jet Speed then drove MJF and MVP out of the ring, and they were able to hold it down while Templario got a mask to Místico that Speedball had brought down with him, smart man, and he was able to get him into the ring. The Luchadors then held the line on the ramp against the Hurt Syndicate as MVP held back Bobby and Shelton, and then Jet Speed was able to hold up Místico and raise his hands in celebration. So this match was awesome, and I was very tempted to call it match of the night, but it ended in a DQ. But the crowd was really into it. The wrestling was unbelievable in this. MJF meshed really well with Místico and vice versa. You know, they say styles make fights, and these are two very clashing styles, but damn was MJF really, really compatible with Místico in this match. And it led to an absolute banger. I don't mind the end. Like, you know, I was talking about this last week with the double count out between Swerve and Ospreay. You like to see, you know, an actual finish, you know, something a little more, you know, final. But I think this is smart here. MJF, you know, he gets all the, you know, he gets the heat, bro. He steals Místico's mask. I think Excalibur said it was the first time in his career his mask had been stolen. So I thought that was really cool. And he gets all that heat. The Hurt Syndicate beat down Místico, which also helps. But then it is Místico in the end who not only gets the win, but he's the one who gets his hand raised by Jet Speed and, you know, gets that showing as well. So in a spot that is very tough to book, I think that is actually fairly smart booking by both Tony and whoever was helping out on the CMLL side. Heading back into the comments, Maria did call this the match of the night. You know it, agreeing with me, loving the match, but hating the ending. Again, yeah, it's the ending. Yeah, you want that finality, but this I think was the smartest way to do it without having to pin one of these two guys and actually giving somebody a win. Because now Místico, he does hold the win over MJF, even though MJF, you know, kind of won the war, so to speak. And Fernando agreeing it is an excellent match as well. Following that, we had another very good match, which saw Ricochet, Hologram, Máscara Dorada, and Lio Rush facing off for 4 million pesos. I do not remember what the conversion rate was. If somebody wants to double check that for me. I think it was a little over $400,000 or something here in the U.S. But this was a lot of fun. It was a little weird watching because looking at it, Lio Rush and Ricochet worked together for so long in the match. I was like, why wasn't this just a tag team match? But I think they kind of wanted to have, well, it's weird. Like, you would think they wanted to have the Hologram Máscara Dorada face off, but it didn't really happen. You kind of had it briefly because Rush and Ricochet were working together up until the point where they were celebrating, and then Lio rubbed Ricochet's head, and that pissed Ricochet off, so Lio did it again, and it led to a shoving match until the Luchadors came in and ended it. And then it looked like Hologram and Dorada were going to go at it. And instead, Hologram ducked Dorada, hit the ropes, and came rebounding back so hard. It was a tope suicida with a flip through the ropes. And I thought he killed Lio Rush. He was going so fast. The thud when he hit that barricade, which Excalibur pointed out, and thankfully he did, because I was like, what are these made of? They are permanent barricades screwed into the floor, because that thing did not give a lot, and it was such a loud thud. I honestly thought Hologram killed Lio. And then, obviously, Dorada followed that up with a tope of his own to Ricochet. But later in the match, you had Ricochet on the top rope, and he was going to go for a 450 on Lio. However, Lio was able to get up, and he crotched Ricochet. And then Hologram came over and grabbed Leo and shoved him back into the turnbuckles before pulling Leo back and trying to hit a portal bomb. But Leo countered that, and we got a pinfall attempt. He even got his feet on the rope. But Hologram was able to not only kick, Leo got caught with his feet up on the ropes. Leo then went back into the corner after Ricochet, who was starting to get up. But Hologram crotches Ricochet again as he again knocks Rush into the turnbuckles. And this time he is able to get Leo up for the portal bomb and get the win. So this was a lot of fun. But again, I feel like this should have been a tag match. You still could have had it for the 4 million pesos, split it between the two guys. Especially because if you watch Hologram, he's winning. I think he's now either 29 or 30-0. So anytime he's on your screen, he's more than likely going to win. And the obvious guy getting pinned here was going to be Leo Rush. So I think even in the tag match, that probably would have happened. But you could have allowed Dorada to get the pinfall there if you wanted to. And yeah, I don't know. I think the only thing it really lended itself to was Ricochet and Leo having that meltdown in the middle of the match. But other than that, the wrestling in this was great. It was a lot of fun. You got some good flippy shit out of it. It was billed as a high-flying 4 million pesos match. So you got a decent chunk of the high flying, but a lot of it was Leo and Ricochet really holding the two luchadors down. So would have liked to see maybe a little bit more high flying. Definitely would have liked to see Hologram and Dorada mix it up a little bit more. They had like one decent sequence, but it didn't really lead to anything. So, and they had some great teamwork at the start of the match as well. So it was what it was in terms of, the way they set it up, but still, it was still some awesome wrestling, as Maria said. Yeah, even if I'm nitpicking, to be honest, but yeah, it was awesome. It really was. All right, after this, we went to our lone title match of the evening. I am burning through this card, but it was, like I said, it was basically all wrestling, and I've been trying to cut back on match recaps. I guess I should have wrote a little more, but oh well. Anyway, this was the co-main as we saw Mercedes Moné face off against Zeuxis, which I somehow said correctly last week, for the CMLL World Women's Championship. Headed into commercial, Zeuxis landed right on her head after Tope Suicida, and I do not understand how she was able to get up for that. I hope she's okay. Last I saw she was. I didn't see anything new about her. I will do my best to quickly check and see if anybody got hurt. Looks like nope, we're okay, so that's good. I was just checking because the match ending was pretty abrupt because I wasn't expecting it. We had both women on the top rope, and then as Zeuxis was going for what looked like a slam off the top, Mercedes was able to maneuver into position and flip into a cross body slam, much like we saw Bandido beat the Beast Mortos with last week. It was very much like that. And I was like, oh, that was a really cool move. And then Mercedes pinned Zeuxis for the win. And I was just like, oh, shit, that was the end of the match. Like, it literally came out of nowhere. I was very surprised that won the match. I don't know why they went that way. I don't know if it was something where, they didn't want Zeuxis pinned or submitted. Well, I mean, she was pinned, but yeah, I don't know why she wouldn't want to get pinned to, the Moné maker or tap for the statement maker off of, instead of winning off of just such a seemingly random move. But either way, Mercedes Moné is now your CML World Women's Champion. And Aubrey Edwards tried to put the belt on her, but she is officially in Ultimo Dragon mode. And she had like 6 or 7, maybe even 8 belts on her. She couldn't keep them all up. It was incredibly difficult. She dropped one of them because like the buckle came undone. But yeah, Mercedes has all of the titles just about right now, except for one. And that leads me to after the match, when a video package from Timeless Tony Storm came up on the Tron, and it was a video of her walking around Mexico in a trench coat and a hat, looking like, Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca, like real, old school, cool looking, like a detective. And it was a very film noir-esque type of voiceover as that she was doing, talking about having to meet a chief executive officer who just might run into her past. I believe that was the basic gist of it. The mixing wasn't great on that. Either way, as it ended, Marina Shirakawa then appeared underneath the Tron. So just so you guys have the setup in case you didn't watch tonight, there was a main Tron and then two smaller side ones, but right underneath it was a platform with some steps, and everyone would come out onto the platform and then go down the steps for their entrance. So Mina appeared up on the platform, and that was enough to distract Mercedes as Toni Storm came in that hat and trench coat, which now that we can see it in color was red. So she rolls in looking like Carmen Sandiego, and after smelling Mercedes to let her know she's there, she German suplexes Moné, and all of Mercedes' titles go flying. And it was a pretty funny visual. After that, Mercedes tries to escape up the ramp, but Toni follows her and tries to hit a Storm Zero, but the referee corps comes out and pulls Toni off of Mercedes. So Toni grabs a mic and says, "Let the games begin." All right, so I did talk a little bit about the match, how shocked I was in the way it ended. It was pretty good up until that point. I haven't seen a lot of Zeuxis. I think I've seen her once or twice. I think maybe on AEW television, and maybe I saw her on a New Japan show. I'm not 100% on that. Don't quote me, but I thought she looked good, and she's Puerto Rican, so I was definitely rooting for her. But just again, like this is another match similar to the Okada Briscoe match where I just feel like it never hit the crescendo I was expecting out of it, and the ending was so abrupt because at least I knew with the Okada Briscoe match, okay, they're trying to hit their finishers, like it's gonna end, in a moment, and eventually you had Okada, hit a tombstone and the Rainmaker. Mercedes hit a move I don't think I've ever seen her finish a match with, let alone hit. Not at least I'm sure Maria could tell me whether or not Mercedes has done either of those things, but it was so sudden. I feel like I didn't even pay enough attention to this match. So again, very strange ending in my opinion, but the post-match stuff I thought really saved it. It was really funny. I very much enjoyed it. And they are keeping this feud very fresh so far. We've had the two women between Mercedes and Toni, go back and forth each week. You kind of had Toni get the first one over Mercedes stealing her dinner the other week. And then Mercedes got the best of Toni the week after. And now Toni has gotten the best of Mercedes. And the games are afoot. So I'm very excited to see how they continue this, as somebody who was a little nervous at the beginning of it being such a long time between the end of Double or Nothing to All In. So far so good. I think it's been 4 weeks now, and I think they've done a great job. All right, before getting the main event, let's go to the comments because I'm sure Maria has a lot to say about Mercedes winning the title, and of course, yep, her CEO collects another championship at All In. We collect the big one. Maria saying every now and again she goes in her bag of tricks, meaning Mercedes, and yeah, I guess so. And I don't mind that. I just think, and because I don't mind a move winning basically out of nowhere, but it didn't feel like there was a lot of build up to that move either. So maybe the crowd just wasn't into it, and I wasn't looking up as much because I was, trying to figure something out, but. Whether it was setting this up or typing my notes, but either way, I wish there was more build up to it because I would have had no problem with that winning the match. I'm like, oh wow, she won with that. That's really cool. But because it was, wait, she won with that? Like that's not the reaction I think personally you want when you have a finish like that. So, an interesting finish to say the least. And to close out, Maria saying, "Timeless will regret her games. We shall see." I think we got about 28 days, give or take, until All In. So I'll tell you this right now. I am rooting for Toni, Maria. I love Toni, but if Mercedes wins the title, I'm not going to complain. She is she's a great wrestler. She's clearly doing a lot, not just for the AEW women's division, but you can kind of look at women's divisions as a whole throughout multiple promotions. So if Mercedes wins, I'm fine. I'm not going to come here and cry, but I will be a little disappointed. It's saying that his one complaint is some of the endings tonight, and you know what? I will agree with that because I think you probably have a very good argument for the final match, which we'll get into in a second. But yeah, there were a couple of wonky endings, especially these last two matches, and especially for a show billed as Grand Slam. We had 3 of them here in New York. They were all unbelievable. I was able to go to 2 of them, and I had a great time at both, especially that first one. And then the one in Australia, I think if that was earlier this year or late last year, either way, that was amazing. And that went on in the middle of the night on a Saturday, I think. I think it was technically a collision taping they essentially did. And that I thought was better than this. And part of it was the endings. And part of it was just, I felt more stakes on that show. There was a few more titles defended. You had Mercedes defended against Harley. Okada defended against Buddy. Copeland defended against Moxley. Like, there was a lot more to that show than to this one. So, I definitely preferred Grand Slam Australia to Grand Slam Mexico. Even though I thought the crowd brought it, and we had some really good wrestling, especially in the middle there with the MJF Místico match and the 4-way. But it was bookended by 2 very chaotic tag team matches with a lot of people in it. Perhaps a few too many. And you also had while an interesting title change, and one I kind of agree with, to help build Mercedes up. And again, the Ultimate Dragon look is always hilarious. I thought it just fell flat just because the ending was so abrupt without any build to it. Maria also saying she didn't like the format out of the matches. I don't know if you mean just like the order they were in or just the way they had booked it in the ring. But either way, I think, whatever you mean in either way by that, I think you have a good argument to make for that. But speaking of the main event, let's get to it. So we saw Will Ospreay, Swerve Strickland, and the Opps, which I just got their shirt. It came in the other day. Face off against the Death Riders, the Young Bucks, and the Beast Mortos. So real quick note on Mortos. He was actually not initially invited to the show. There's a whole thing with LFI, in particular Roosh, because Roosh had a very big and public falling out with CMLL, and he tried to make his own company, and he took a bunch of the wrestlers. I don't know if Mortos was involved in that. He may or may not have been. But because of LFI, those 3 guys weren't invited. Místico, he even put out a statement, and it was a pretty good statement. He was like, look, these are the rules of CMLL. If we ever get invited, we very much appreciate it. But, we'll just continue to do what we're doing here in AEW. It was a good statement by him. But Tony Khan actually went to bat with CMLL management for Mortos, asking if he could be on the card. And they actually were pretty cool about it and very accommodating. And they're like, he hasn't wrestled in 14 years. Well, he could come back and get another chance. So I thought that was really cool by Tony. I thought that was really cool by CMLL management. And we got some great face-offs with him and Samoa Joe in this match. So I will take it. Other note on this match was you saw Ospreay come in with a big bandage around his head and a big it looked like a black eye. Shivani said it almost even looks like a blood blister. Either way, obviously that was from the attack by the Bucks last week when they got him with the thumbtack sneakers. So yeah, he took an absolute beating, and it absolutely showed. Also, real quick, all that Tony Khan stuff was according to Fightful. Shout out to them. Gotta make sure you cite your sources, kids. Get on that. What were those called? Bibliographies. EasyBib.com. Anyway, jumping to the end of this match, after Swerve and Ospreay were able to get a double team on Moxley and pretty much take him out, Will set him up for a Swerve stomp, and Swerve went up top. However, Nicholas, I think it was Nicholas, came up and tried to shove Swerve off the top rope, but Swerve was able to fight him off. This then led to Marina jumping on the apron on the other side of the ring, where she was able to distract referee Rick Knox because he's on the Bucks payroll. And Matthew jumped up from the other side of the corner, and he shoved Swerve off the top. Swerve hit his face off the top rope and fell right into Moxley, who rolled him up and pulled on the trunks and held down Swerve for 3 to get the win. After the match, the victorious team immediately started a beatdown, and that ended up with Moxley alone in the center of the ring with Swerve ready to be put in a bulldog choke. However, it is this point that Hangman Adam Page's music hit, and he came straight down to square off with Mox, who was forced to drop Swerve, obviously, and the two immediately started having a hockey fight. Mox briefly got an advantage as he sent Hangman to the apron, and he thought to the floor, but obviously, if you're going to send Hangman out there, you got to make sure he goes to the floor, because Hangman held on, immediately set up for, and hit a buckshot lariat. But it wasn't on Moxley, as Moxley was able to duck it, and instead, Hangman hits Matthew Jackson instead, and that caused Nicholas to be like, what the hell? You know, and Hangman's just like, I don't care, fuck you guys, essentially. I already told you how I feel last week. Moxley then tried to use the distraction of the Bucks to sneak in and get a cheap shot with the briefcase. However, he is stopped by all the members of the opposing team as they had finished mopping up the rest of the Death Riders and Mortos on the outside. So it was just a line of like Hobbs, Joe, Ospreay, and oh my God, why am I blanking on the wrestler's name? Literally, Shibata. There we go. Yeah, just all those just in a line, which I would dare not to cross. And neither did Moxley as he slid back out of the ring and retreated up the ramp where Heyman actually went and tried to follow him, but the Death Riders quickly got out of there. And then as Hanger was returning to the ring, he had a stare down with the Bucks, and then he headed back to, celebrate with everybody except Swerve. We didn't really see what happened with the two of them. Swerve was still kind of recovering in the corner and was being checked on. So as for this match, kind of similar to the opening tag, very chaotic, a lot of people involved. It did feel a little bit more like an AEW tag than a CMLL, like Luchador tag, but the rules are still pretty fast and loose, and Knox normally calls these big tags fast and loose anyway, but this one was really fast and loose. And, it led to some cool moments. Like I mentioned, it led to Joe and Mortos, who, by the way, Joe, Will, Swerve, and Shibata were insanely over. Hobbs was over too as well. He got a meat chant. So, there was these faces were over. They booed the heels, specifically Mox. They were calling Yuta something that I couldn't quite catch, and I'm sure Excalibur couldn't repeat. So it was good wrestling. It just felt a little messier than usual. I think that would be my only critique, but I still had a lot of fun. But more importantly, I think, is what happened after. And that is the, let's say, inadvertent save of Swerve Strickland by one Hangman Adam Page. Now, Hangman did say last week at the tail end of a 4-hour show to the Bucks that the Bucks should stay out of the business of both himself, Will, and Swerve. And Swerve had heard this. So while Hangman probably wasn't making the save for Swerve, he did. And hopefully, depending on how they play it, that could be a show of good faith. It could also just be I wasn't coming to save you. I was just coming to kick the crap out of Moxley. So I do like that that is very open-ended at the end of this episode. And it, continues the story into next week. So great writing there by whoever came up with that idea, because it just adds another layer to this already phenomenal story. All right, headed back into the comments. Maria once again saying that there's too many people in these matches. Yeah, you have so many people. Again, this was a 10-man, I believe. You had a 14-man at the top. It's a lot. And I know they do that a decent amount of times in lucha, but it's a lot for us here in America. Maria calling me Mr. Mercedes Moné. Oh, not me. Mortos. My bad. I thought you meant that I was saying like I will be happy if Mercedes wins. It's saying give me Joe versus Mortos on Dynamite. I will gladly take that. That would be great. It's saying maybe they're chanting Puta Yuda. Maybe that would be a good one. It was very difficult to make out because I don't think the whole crowd got it. They also might have lowered the crowd mic there. And Maria's saying that the Avengers will assemble at All In, and they will, and it's going to be awesome. And this is another one. It's kind of like this last time Hangman won the title. We all knew he was beating Kenny, but it didn't matter as long as you do it well and you do it right. The emotions are still going to be there, and it's still going to be amazing, and we're still going to cheer. So we all want to see that, and it's going to happen, and we're all going to mark out the same, even though we know it's coming. And I want to say hello to Neptune Nymph, who is very excited that Mercedes Moné now has 6 belts. I think does she have 5 belts or 6? Because I don't know if it's 6 belts and 5 championships or 6 championships and 7 belts, because the Rev Pro one is 2 belts. It's very confusing. And Maria saying the Beast Mortos has a very good taste of women. I'm not going to disagree. Just to be political about that. All right, so it's officially 6 belts and then I guess 5 championships. It's a lot. Like I said, she looks like Ultimo Dragon, or at minimum, she looks like the Triple H meme with him holding every title that exists. And Maria's convinced it's going to be 7 championships at all. Maybe we shall see. But all right, that was Grand Slam Mexico. Oh, there it is. I thought I lost my overall thoughts there. Like I said, this was good. I think it really kind of depends on your taste in wrestling, because some of this was unbelievable. I thought the MJF Místico match was unbelievable, even though I didn't love the ending. I enjoyed the 4-way match, even though, again, I thought maybe kind of could have been a tag, but it still worked really well. And even we really didn't get Dorada against Hologram straight up, we did get some really cool high-flying moves throughout that. I think, the downsides were, as I've been saying, too many men in these multi-man tag matches. 14 guys and 10 guys is a lot. And maybe part of it is the ring size, too. I don't know if the rings are bigger and smaller in CMLL, and it doesn't allow for maybe if it is smaller, maybe it doesn't allow as much room for them to work as opposed to, the AEW ring. But either way, they were too busy. There was just too much going on. It was too complicated. And if they felt booked differently than your standard multi-man AEW tag matches. And while I was kind of expecting that with the first match, because there were so many CMLL guys in it, I wasn't expecting that with the final match. And that's what we ended up getting. So they weren't my favorite. And then the title change, while I'm here for the title change, I think it's great for Mercedes heading into All In. And it's pretty cool for CMLL. And, another, a show of good faith by them putting a title on Mercedes, even though I think they have like $1 billion. Yeah, I just thought that I wish the ending had been built up more. So, yeah, good show, not great. Still think Grand Slam Australia was better. And I think maybe you could argue, I don't really remember the second New York Grand Slam that well, but you might be able to argue this was the weakest of all of them. And, you didn't really have too many, you didn't have really any promos either. You just had the one from Hangman at the start. So there weren't a whole lot of stories being moving forward outside of what happened in the ring. So you had, Speedball and Kevin Knight going after the Hurt Syndicate. So that was helpful story-wise. You had the stuff with Tony Storm and Mercedes, and then you kind of had the stuff with Hangman and Moxley, and then, Will and Swerve and how that's all going to go down. The rest of it was just kind of a Foster clock. and Okada Briscoe, which was just slow. All right, before we get out of here, let's, it's saying, If Mercedes wins it All In, she'll need to hire Luther just to carry all the titles to the ring. Wow, I actually don't hate that idea. Now, all right, here's the thing. The stupid idea that popped in my head is that Luther turns on Tony to help Mercedes, and then he becomes the person who does help her carry all the titles to the ring. But I would really hate it if this match ended with stupid outside interference like that. Whoever wins, I hope they win. I don't want to say clean, because if Mercedes cheats, I'm not going to hate it. But even then, I think whoever wins will win clean, and I don't want any shenanigans. I think this match is too big and, quite frankly, too important to have anything happen, of that sort. So hopefully they keep this clean, and whoever wins, and wins decisively as well, unless they really want to do a rematch, which they will, I imagine, at some point, but hopefully not too soon. All right. On that note, unless anyone has anything else to say, I would like to thank everyone so much for watching me here at the Mark It Down Podcast. We'd appreciate it if you like and subscribe. If you like the video here, lets us know, all of us here at the pod, know that you're enjoying what we're doing here on the show, and we can continue to do it. And if you subscribe, you continue to get all the great stuff here on the pod. We will obviously be back here next Wednesday to review what I'm praying is a normal-ass Dynamite that ends at 10 or close to 10 o'clock. James will also hopefully be back next week, so we'll have him. The Gym Pack Zone will be returning shortly, for those of you who didn't see that last week. But James is really upset with what's going on with them right now. But they have another pay-per-view coming up soon, and he's planning on not only checking that out and reviewing it, but giving a real state of the TNA address on that, so he can really get off his chest about everything they're doing. And also, we'll do our best to cover anything big happening in WWE or NXT or abroad. For those of you who want to follow us on our social media platforms and are watching us here on YouTube, you can check out our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or Blue Sky. Links all in the description below. If you're on Facebook or Twitter and want to check us out in some other places, Twitter is at @markitdown_pod. Instagram is at markitdownpod. YouTube.com/markitdown3665. And then Blue Sky is markitdownpod.bsky.social, or as always, just search Mark It Down Podcast in any of your social media sites, and we are more than likely to come up. All right. Before we do get out of here, saying, telling me good job. See you next week. Thank you, I appreciate it. And Maria asking a very interesting question that I can briefly cover, although I don't know too much about it, but she asked me what my thoughts were on the Jon Moxley lawsuit. Now, for those of you who did not see, Jon Moxley and AEW, I think it might have been AEW directly, was sued by a former employee, somebody who was working around the ring, and he was the guy Moxley shoved to the floor after taking a screwdriver from him during a cage match. I believe it was the one against Kenny Omega a few years ago. And he's suing for injuries and stuff like that. Now, I don't know or recall all the details. I did read the article, but I think the easy and probably right line to take is, Moxley probably shouldn't have done that. I know the guy was going to be involved and such, but unless somebody agrees to take a bump, you shouldn't shove them. At least enough where they're going to fall. Some of the claims the person made, though, in the lawsuit, saying that this is part of something Moxley does all the time, and in terms of his character, actual Jonathan Goodman, the real person, and not just Jon Moxley in kayfabe's character, I thought that was a little outlandish. He is not a lunatic fringe. He is not, unscripted violence. He for all accounts and purposes, backstage, he's actually, one of the most buttoned up guys. So that seemed a little ridiculous as a part of the lawsuit. But, lawyers are going to write in whatever they can in an attempt to drum it up, especially for a high profile case like this. So I think my current thought is I'm going to wait for more information and I'm going to see what happens. But yeah, it was just Moxley shouldn't have done it, and it's just one of those things where there's definitely a memo that's gone out, not only in AEW, but probably most companies saying, yo, don't interact with people unless you've been given clearance to, so that this doesn't happen anymore. And in fact, I think somebody on Reddit had pulled up when this lawsuit was reported, the memo that was leaked to the press a couple days later saying, hey, don't interact with people who aren't cleared for you to interact with. So it seems like AEW's already handled this a long time ago, and it's just taken a while for the lawsuit to come through. Question from Ahmad here. If Ricochet wins, do you expect him to get a push after the win? If you meant tonight, he unfortunately didn't. Ricochet is in a good spot where he's going to be on TV every week, and he's currently searching for his crew. And you kind of saw tonight that perhaps crew themselves, Leo Rush and Action Andretti, aren't going to be those guys after seeing last week that Lee Moriarty and Blake Christian are most likely not going to be those guys either. But he'll be on TV every week. He's going to get wins. He's just in a spot right now where he hasn't really had a feud. And I think he can really use one. But I think once he finds his guys, he'll probably get into one and really start the ball rolling. And you know what's saying about the lawsuit, Cry Me River, how does this guy live in so much pain? I live in a lot, personally. My knees are always hurting. But look, I don't know what his injuries are. I don't think they were really in the lawsuit, at least to my memory. They could have been. But, I think it might have been something with his shoulder. And, hey, I've had a torn labrum since high school. So, shoulders can be a legit pain. And Ahmad saying, again on Ricochet, Ricochet's character is developed in a surprising way, and no one expecting him to be this calm. He is a legendary wrestler. I will agree. Legendary is a strong word, but he's got he's still got a lot left in his career, and he can become that. He will definitely always be remembered. I can guarantee you that. Although heroes get remembered, but legends never die. I don't know if he's at Legends yet, but he will be remembered. And yeah, his character, coming from WWE where he didn't really have much except for kind of like smiley flippy guy who hits the big spot, to becoming this absolute herb that he has become. It's been a real awesome transition watching him find this character and portraying it on TV, and just having one of the traits being him being bald. So that's why I think he's going to be on TV. Between that and how good of a wrestler he is, he's going to be on TV. He's going to get a push at some point somewhere. It's just a matter of where and when. And I guess technically, you can kind of go for what title. Yeah, I like him too, but yeah, I could see him if he should win the TNT championship within the next year. I would think that. Ahmad is saying, I don't know what everyone's problem is with Ricochet's bald head. It's just funny. It's just funny to make fun of him calling his bald. All right, I do want to wrap up here, guys. So again, thank you so much for watching me here at the Bark It Down podcast. My name is Nick Cummings, and I'll see you guys next time. All right. Have a good one, everyone. Adios.